Yvonne was a young, beautiful woman who had just completed a bachelor's degree in business administration. With determination and hard work, she opened her own restaurant right in the heart of a busy city. Inside the restaurant buzzed with life. The rich scent of jollof rice, pepper soup and fresh pastries filled the air. The restaurant was her pride, a dream she had nurtured since childhood. But today, even with the sounds of happy customers and the clinking of plates filling the room, she felt a strange emptiness tugging at her heart. Yvonne was sitting at her favorite table. Across from her sat Gina, her childhood friend, who had been her confidant since their days of running barefoot around their small village. "I need to get married, Gina," Yvonne said, resting her chin on her palm. Her voice tinged with a mix of longing and impatience. Gina would chuckle. "Stop the rush, Yvonne. Love does not work on a timetable." Yet, Yvonne could not push the thought aside. She desperately longed for a husband. The pressure from her family only made it harder to ignore. One evening, her phone buzzed with a call from her mother. Yvonne, her mother's voice carried both concern and impatience. "When will you bring a man home? All my friends' daughters are married and giving them grandchildren already." One morning, life carried on as usual. The restaurant opened to the familiar chaos of customers placing orders and the tantalizing smell of food wafting through the air. That's when he walked in, Edosa. The man was tall and confident, and with an easy smile. He had an air about him that caught Yvonne's attention immediately. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Yvonne felt her heart skip a beat as their eyes met. When he left after finishing his meal, she found herself hoping he would come back. And he did, every day for a week. Each visit brought a new conversation, a new story, and before she knew it, Yvonne was laughing at his jokes and looking forward to his company. Before long, Yvonne found herself falling for him, and soon they were officially a couple. Their love seemed to blossom effortlessly. Yvonne felt alive whenever Edosa was around. He brought her flowers, whispered sweet nothings, and promised her the world. After months of dating, Yvonne, feeling confident in their love, decided it was time to take the next step. "Let's get married," she said one evening as they strolled through the park. Edosa stopped, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asked, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You are not pregnant." Yvonne froze. "What do you mean?" He chuckled, almost as if the idea amused him. "I'll marry you when you get pregnant for me." Her heart sank. For the first time, Yvonne saw a side of Edosa she did not recognize. She did not know what to say, her face betraying no emotion. That night, over drinks with Gina, she recounted the conversation. Gina shook her head. "A man who truly loves you does not need proof like that. He should love you, not just the idea of you as a baby maker." "But I don't want to lose him," Yvonne said softly. "I need to get married." Days turned into weeks, and Yvonne found herself consumed by a desperate need to fulfill Edosa's condition. When months passed with no sign of pregnancy, she confided in Gina again. "I can't get pregnant," Yvonne whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've been trying for months." Gina's face twisted with concern. Why are you doing this to yourself? If he truly loves you, he would not put you through this. But Yvonne was resolute. I really want to get married, and I love him. Gina, I'll do anything to keep this one. Determined to find answers, Yvonne visited doctors. They ran tests, examined every possibility. There is nothing wrong with you, the doctor told her. When Edosa was tested, the results were the same, perfectly healthy. Yet, the months dragged on without any success. Desperation pushed Yvonne into unfamiliar territory. She visited churches, begged pastors for prayers, and clung to every promise of a miracle. Still, nothing happened. Edosa's patience wore thin. I'm not getting any younger, he reminded her. If you can't give me a child, what's the point of all this? Yvonne's heart ached. That night, as she sat alone in her apartment, she remembered her mysterious great-grand-aunt who lived in the village, a mysterious woman known for her uncanny ability to solve difficult problems. She was a native doctor, respected and feared by many. Desperation clouded Yvonne's judgment as she picked up her phone to call Gina. I've made up my mind, Yvonne said, her voice firm but shaky. I'm visiting my great-grand-aunt in the village tomorrow. Gina's sigh was loud enough to be heard over the phone. Yvonne, you know I don't support any of this. I've decided, Gina, Yvonne replied, her mind already set. With nothing left to lose, Yvonne packed a bag and made the journey to the village. The landscape gradually changed from a bustling city street to quiet, dusty road lined with tall trees and green fields. When she finally arrived, her great-grand-aunt greeted her with warmth and curiosity. The older woman's piercing eyes seemed to see right through Yvonne as she listened intently to her story. When Yvonne finished explaining her plight, the woman's face grew serious. Are you certain you want to do this? Her great-grand-aunt asked, her voice carrying both concern and warning. Yes, Mama, Yvonne replied, without hesitation. I'll do anything to get pregnant. With a deep sigh, her great-grand-aunt nodded and disappeared into a small room. When she returned, she carried a small calabash filled with a dark, bitter-smelling liquid. Drink this, she instructed, handing it to Yvonne. Yvonne hesitated for a moment, then took the calabash and sipped the concoction. The taste was foul, and she winced at it slide down her throat, leaving a sharp bitterness behind. The native doctor began preparing Yvonne for the next step. She painted Yvonne's arm and face with a white native chalk, marking intricate patterns while chanting softly. She then tied a white cloth around Yvonne's chest and waist. As the sun dipped low in the sky, they made their way to the village river. The water glistened in the fading light, its surface eerily still. The great-grand-aunt handed Yvonne a bag filled with sweets, biscuits, and cans of Fanta. Offer these to the spirit of the river, she said. Yvonne obeyed, throwing the sweets and biscuits into the water and pouring the Fanta carefully, the fizzy liquid bubbling as it mixed with the water's currents. Her great-grand-aunt stood nearby, chanting in a low melodic tune, her voice blending with the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Yvonne felt a strange chill as the ceremony continued. She was not sure if it was fear, hope, or something else entirely. Later that month, she discovered she was pregnant. Overwhelmed with joy, she called Gina. "It worked," she cried. "I'm pregnant." Edosa was equally thrilled. He proposed immediately, and the two began planning an elaborate wedding. The ceremony was grand, a spectacle that has the entire city talking. For a while, it seemed like Yvonne's life was finally perfect. When their daughter was born, Edosa's joy knew no bounds. He showered Yvonne with gifts, a new car, jewelries and flowers. But as the months passed, something strange began to happen. The baby was not growing like she should. At 7 months, she still could not sit up or crawl. Doctors were baffled, unable to find any medical explanation. Edosa grew frustrated, his pride wounded by the whispers of neighbors and friends. He planned a grand first birthday party for their daughter, but the celebration turned sour when the guests noticed how small and fragile the baby looked. That evening, after the guests had left, Edosa confronted Yvonne. "What's wrong with this child?" he demanded. "I can't keep being humiliated like this. If she does not improve by next month, you will have to leave." Yvonne's words shattered. She turned to Gina, who held her as she sobbed. "I warned you," Gina said gently. "He never loved you for you." Desperate for answers, Yvonne visited a spiritual palace in the outskirts of the city. It was the home of a priestess known far and wide for her wisdom and mystical powers. Yvonne stepped inside, cradling her baby in trembling arms. The priestess was an older woman with piercing eyes that seemed to see through Yvonne's soul. She gestured for Yvonne to sit, then stretched out her hands. "Let me see the child," she said in a calm and commanding voice. Yvonne hesitated, but her desperation outweighed her fear. She gently handed the baby to the priestess. The room fell silent as the woman studied the child. Suddenly, a gasp escaped her lips, and she stumbled back. In her arms, the baby shimmered, a tiny form morphing into a sleek, shiny silver fish. The creature flopped once before returning to its human shape. The priestess's hand shook as she carefully placed the baby back into Yvonne's arms. "This child," she whispered, her voice low and full of dread, "is not from this world." Yvonne's heart raced. "What do you mean?" she stammered, though deep down she feared she already knew. Her knees felt weak, and the room seemed to spin around her. The priestess sat down slowly, her expression grave. "Tell me everything," she demanded. "What did you do before this child came into your life?" Tears streamed down Yvonne's face as she recounted the visit to her great-grand-aunt, the strange potion she drank, and the candies and cookies she tossed into the river. She admitted her desperation to conceive, and now she had turned to unorthodox methods to please Edosa. The priestess shook her head, her voice heavy with regret. "The sacrifices you made bound you with the marine spirits. This child belongs to them, and will return to our world when the time comes. There is nothing you can do to change that." Yvonne sat, frozen, her mind racing with disbelief. "No, there must be a way. She's my baby. What will I tell Edosa?" she cried. But the priestess remained firm. "The spirits always take back what is theirs. It is only a matter of time." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Yvonne left, clutching her baby tightly. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Over the next few weeks, she watched helplessly as the child's health deteriorates. Then, one cold morning, her worst fear came true. The baby passed away in her sleep. Grief overwhelmed Yvonne, but Edosa's cold indifference made it worse. One evening, with a voice devoid of emotion, he told her he wanted a divorce. The words hit Yvonne like a thunderclap, shattering what little strength she had left. Her heart was weighed down by pain and regrets. The marriage she had sacrificed so much for, the love she had clung to so desperately, had fallen apart. Yet, even in her darkest moments, a small ember of determination flickered within her. Life had beaten her down, but it had not defeated her. Yvonne realized that her worth wasn't tied to a marriage or anyone else's approval. She made a quiet promise to herself. This time, she would rise, not for Edosa, not for the society, but for her own happiness and peace. She would rebuild her life on her terms, proving that a woman's strength lies in her resilience, not her relationships.